Great, I appreciate that. I think, you know, in general, your position or your future position as Secretary of Homeland Security sits at like the fulcrum of these big issues we're having as a country, just big cultural issues. The use of law enforcement in our streets and where our rights begin and end, and then our elections, our democracy. And given the importance of that, I think it's important that we state really clearly where you are on those two issues. You know, I think first and foremost on the use of ICE. You know, my state voted for Donald Trump in 2024. A lot of people supported the president's immigration agenda, but then they watched with their own eyes, not filtered through a news source. They watched with their own eyes American citizens killed in their streets for protesting. They saw children caught in the crossfire and being tear gassed. They saw people randomly being pulled out of their cars and walking down the streets because they happened to look like they could be an immigrant and checked for their papers, which for many of us has a real history. They have seen people law enforcement go into people's homes without a judicial warrant for a country that was invented because we were being oppressed by a foreign force that demanded entry into our homes. So you say you don't want ICE in the news, you say you want to rebuild trust. Your predecessor was fired because she couldn't manage that, and you know, people had to go in and bring the temperature down. Can you, without other words, just state clearly what you'd be willing to do to fundamentally reform ICE and put into law to do so, since that trust is gone?
Ma'am, as you know, I can't make the law. You guys make that for me.
But you're going to be the secretary.
Yes, I agree, but I can't make the law. I can work within the parameters.
No, but tell us what you'd be willing to put into law.
So right now, the law that I work into is your guys' decision. We'll work through that. But I do believe there is a better approach. And I think working with municipalities, I would love to see ICE become a transport more than the front line. If we can get back into just simply working with law enforcement, we're going to them and we're picking up these criminals from their jail. One, we're going to reimburse them for having the person there. And have partnership is vitally important. I don't think there needs to be a law to change that. I think I can work within what is there, but there's an approach that can happen, but we got to have partners.
Yeah, I understand, but we're not going to agree to this here, but I would just say the ability, you know, the trust is gone, and not just with Democrats. That's why we're here. That's why your predecessor was fired. And there needs to be fundamental reform of this law enforcement agency. And I think that the public writ large is crying out for that. Let me turn to elections.
Senator,
let me turn to elections. The Department of Homeland Security has the mandate since the Obama era for securing our election infrastructure. That's an important job, and you'll be secretary. The President has continued to say that he won the 2020 election, even though there's been 60 court cases saying the opposite. He has said he wants to federalize the elections. He has said name-check cities, including Detroit. He has said voting machines are inaccurate. He has said in the State of the Union, I was on the Senate floor, paraphrase, that if his side doesn't win in November, then the elections were rigged, which is exactly what he said 8 months before the 2020 election. You have your own history. You did not certify the 2020 election. There are people at the Department of Homeland Security, 3 people specifically, who are well-known election deniers now running election security functions. Who won the 2020 election?
Ma'am, we know that President Joe Biden was sworn into office. He was the president for the last 4 years.
But I do believe won the election?
My job as Department of Homeland Security Secretary will be to make sure that we assure that the elections are fair and people can trust them.
Does the federal government run the elections process, or do states?
It's very clear in the Constitution that the states control state elections, and then there is some federal oversight that's on it, but the federal government can set some standards. So if you're talking about the Save American Act requiring you, which is within the Constitution, by the way, requiring individuals to be citizens of the United States, I don't think it's too much to ask somebody to prove they're a citizen of the United States.
That's
to vote
not what
in a
we're
federal
talking about.
election.
I'm talking about administering the elections. If you are Secretary of Homeland Security, do you feel you have the authority to put uniformed officers at polling locations in 2026?
Ma'am, we said this in your office. The only reason why my officers would be there if there was a specific threat for them to be there, not for intimidation. And
So
I said
even though
would
we
be able
didn't
to
need
share
it
that.
during World War II, we didn't need it during Vietnam or the War on Terror, we never had to put uniformed military there. Now, you feel that there's going to be a reason that there's going to be an armed threat to the United States that you
No,
need to
ma'am.
potentially
I
be
said
there?
I can't sit there and guarantee hypothetically of what threat would be and not. I'm not putting military. That's not within my privy.
Uniformed
Yes,
officers.
but if there is a threat, a specific threat, say it's in a Jewish community, and there is a threat that's specific to that polling area, then we will work with local law enforcement. There'll be a reason for us to be there, and it'll be known why we're there.
I think the reason you're here and not Kristi Noem is because Americans trust their local law enforcement now way more than they trust ICE. So I would just say if we ever get to the point where you are being asked to put armed ICE officers at polling locations, we have lost the plot as a country. We have fundamentally lost it. And until I hear someone tell me that this man, President Trump, will actually allow us to have a free and fair election, there is zero trust here, and I cannot trust that he won't try and steal it. Again, I yield back.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your nomination. Congratulations to your family. I can't think of a better person at this moment in time to lead such an important agency. Talking about Americans trusting their local law enforcement, I think that is true. I think that's one of the reasons, as the Attorney General in Florida, I worked so closely with our law enforcement, our local law enforcement, to make sure we were triaging our resources and going after really bad people that wanted to harm our community in a way to make our state safer. And part of doing that is we supported them. We made sure that they had resources, they had more the support behind them. They knew that we had their backs. I'm proud that Florida was the first state to have every single county sign up to work with the federal government, because we were dealing with an unprecedented situation following the last administration where you had people working with radicals in that administration to destroy the border, roll out a welcome mat to everyone, and has left our nation reeling from an unprecedented surge of people we don't know who are here, many of which, before they even got here, had committed crimes and have committed crimes since. The way to recover and shore up our communities is to work with, in partnership, local law enforcement who have an expertise in their communities. And it is disheartening to me, not just as a former attorney general or as a former prosecutor, but as the wife of a law enforcement officer and someone that worked very closely with them, it wrecks me to hear them refer to law enforcement in general, especially some of the men and women that serve currently in the Department of Homeland Security, as breaking into people's homes and shooting Americans. And I think we can all acknowledge that we want law enforcement to meet professional standards, to act with the public safety in mind, to comply with the law. But we do not have to disparage an entire profession of men and women who put their lives on the line for you and for everyone in this room, and said that they were going to dedicate their professional careers to stand on that line and put their safety behind yours. When President Trump got in office, so many of these states on the Democratic side said, I will never work with that man to come in and correct and rid the communities of people that are going to do it harm. We won't. In Minnesota, the first thing they said, I will never help that person. I won't lift a finger, the Attorney General said. So in Florida, where you have 67 out of 67 counties signing up, tell me what I can do to help you. In Minnesota, they had like 7 of 87. Does that surprise anyone? No, because their state leader said, we will not help you. We will not go after the most dangerous in our communities. Have at it. See how it goes. We won't lift a finger. And when the administration says we are dealing with an unprecedented situation, 11 to 20 million people, that's never happened in the history of our country, how do we do this? We need to make sure we're focusing on triaging and getting people out that we know may do harm to our communities. They're like, what are you talking about? You can't have quotas. They won't talk about the quotas where they said we're put to Border Patrol, push more and more and more and more in. However you need to do it. Don't tell us how we can stop this influx or this surge. Tell us how we can push more in. They won't talk about that. And they want to tell you about focusing on children that are here, that are now here. Yes, you need to do that. As somebody that has pushed to protecting children and fought against trafficking with law enforcement's help, yes, you need to do that. But I loved how you said, let's talk about the tens of thousands of children that the federal government helped traffic under the Biden administration that we lost. And when they were made aware of it, they ignored it. You will now have to take over an agency that is charged with cleaning up a disaster, a danger. The Biden administration did that. I cannot think of a better person, someone who acts passionately and fiercely fights for the people he loves, and someone who loves this country and thinks of other people before himself. I am telling you, in Congress, there are all kinds of personality types. But this man came up to me time and time again as the newest United States Senator and said, what can I do to help you? How can we make this place work? How can we get this done? And I look over the course of your life, you left school when your father got sick to go help your family business. That's the kind of person you are. The kind of person that stands up for every person in this office. That's the kind of person, passionate, fierce, a fighter, loyal. That's who I want now protecting this country at the head of the Department of Homeland Security. You said in your testimony, I'll fight for your family just as I fight for mine. Tell me about that personality trait and how you think that will help the Department of Homeland Security in this unprecedented time where the last administration, the last president of the United States abandoned his role to secure this country. Tell me how you bring the personality and your character traits to this role.
It's the way I was raised. It's the way my dad raised us, the way my mom raised us, the way they were raised. We love this country. I mean, think about it. I'm getting to live the American dream. You're telling me a kid from Westville, Oklahoma with a speech impediment would ever be able to be here? That only happens in America. Only in America. And we all probably have the same type of dreams because none of us have royal blood. Maybe some of your parents might have served in public office or not. Mine most certainly did not. And the fact that I'm here, my goodness, that's why people want to come to our country, because they want the American dream. And I want everybody to have the same opportunity that I have, but we have to secure the homeland. We have to make sure that they feel safe stepping out and being in the public eye. We got to make sure that people can have a peace of mind and trust our government. And right now there's a mistrust in our government. I think we have an opportunity to maybe work on that. I meant it when I say that I hope in 6 months we're not. I can't guarantee it because the news choose what they're going to run, but I hope that I'm not on the news every 6 months or 6 months from now every day. I hope DHS is just able to be laser focused on doing their job and it isn't controversial about taking care of the homeland. I hope people have confidence in our agency again. And I'm going to work every day to restore that.
And you'll bring that same passion and zeal and protective instinct to protect every family and every community, working with local law enforcement because they know how to approach in a safe manner their communities.
Nobody will take care of their backyard better than the individual.
Senator Gallego.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, neighbor. How you doing? Easy day.
Hey, brother. Good to see you.
So, some very specific questions. What is the primary mission of Homeland Security investigations?
From the IG or from us?
I'm sorry, from Homeland Security Department, there's HSI is within Homeland
Right.
Security. What is their primary mission?
Well,
It's not a trick question either.
no, I understand that. And every agency, sir, we have specific missions that we are targeted to look at our aspect of protecting the homeland. And different directions have different paths. And in different agencies, region-wide, there are 22 of them there. We all need to be in the same boat, row in the same direction, working for one common goal. And as I said, that's protect the homeland, bring peace of mind, and secure the confidence of the American people.
Okay, so HSI, and being from Arizona, we're very familiar with CBP, ICE, and HSI. HSI specifically is very important because they specialize in dealing with human trafficking, human smuggling, counterfeit, bank fraud, things of that nature. Actually, I have a lot of friends that have worked for them forever. The reason I bring this up is because there is confirmed reports that the Secretary of Homeland Security has ordered HSI agents, pull them off what I just told you were very important missions, to go to Arizona and investigate the 2020 election results, right? That's a very big concern of mine because these agents should be doing the work they're doing. A lot of them already are, field ICE agents instead of actually doing these long-term investigations. But now they're not even doing the ICE enforcement. They're literally going back and looking into conspiracy theories. So, for my experience and seeing you both on the House and the Senate, do you believe that Joe Biden won Arizona in the 2020 presidential election? The reason I ask is because, again, you're potentially deploying HSI agents to Arizona to check a result using our taxpayer dollars to follow up on a conspiracy theory.
Sir, I'm not familiar with what the former secretary did here, and nor am I here to debate what happened in 2020. I do know that there's an opportunity to look at 2020 and make sure that anything that went wrong we can fix moving forward, because what we wanted to make sure is that in the next election, be it the midterms or in 2028, the American people trust our election system. Trust is vitally important. I want to always look at past mistakes and past successes, because I've addressed this multiple times, and I know everybody's busy here, and I know you didn't get to hear me earlier. But Senator, I think we can always do better, and I want to do that. Just like you and I, we've worked on immigration issues before, but because we both know we can do it better.
But you're talking about perspective. I'm talking about going back, and the fact that we're using Homeland Security funds, investigators that should be using their time and value more to check onto something that, by the way, had multiple independent audits, even one run by the Senate Republican and Senate State House representatives that passed, accuracy tests, hand counts, 14 court cases that were confirmed that Biden won in my state. And so when I have personal friends that are HSI agents, friends that I know are telling me they are now being diverted from their duties, and what they're doing is they're instead of investigating child sex trafficking, child abusers, drug traffickers, which I don't disagree, we have not been doing the best at, and certainly I think a lot of that was under the Biden administration, did not do that sufficiently. But now instead of it not being done, now we have the opposite, where some of these best trained people are being ordered by somebody within the chain of command of the White House, which I get to question later, to go investigate this false this false conspiracy theory, right? And as much as, for me, a concern of mine, because, I do know you very personally, and we got into work together, and I think you're an upstanding guy, and I reject this idea that you're not qualified for this job 100%. But when it comes to something as existential as this, that's when I have to start questioning, are you going to be in charge of a department that's going to say, you know what, HSI should not be used for this. As a matter of fact, no one in the Department of Homeland Security should be used to do and investigate an election conspiracy. So that's, what I want to communicate on this is I really urge you just to end the investigation. There's no reason why we need to be getting back to 2020. There certainly isn't any reason why we should be using these highly trained professionals that should be going after some horrible people to be investigating conspiracy theories that have been litigated multiple times and put them back where they were. Moving on from there, my other concern is something that I saw, with the previous secretary, and something that I've seen in myself in my time in the Marines, is that a chain of command is very important. I don't believe there was a real chain of command that was in the Secretary of Homeland Security. And when I say that, it's because I think Stephen Miller was the person who was actually calling the shots there, and you could see the results of what occurred. You had men and women in ICE and CBP that felt that they were unaccountable, talking to actual ICE and CBP agents from Arizona that got deployed to Minnesota. They don't know who really was in their chain of command. They didn't have operational orders. A lot of them did not understand, how to actually engage with the public at all. And when there was a point of who is responsible for making decisions, they could not figure out if it was Miller or if it was Secretary Noem and her deputies. They couldn't figure out if there were quotas versus there are quotas. Now we know that there are quotas. This is the problem. Is like, I want to make sure that if you're there, you're in charge and not Stephen Miller.
Sir, the President has nominated me to be Secretary of Homeland, and I'll take full responsibility for that. Chain of command is important. I believe in empowering people to make decisions, but I will still be talking to the President on a regular basis, and any policy that is within my realm of authority that you guys give us. If the President wants us to look at it, we'll look at it because I serve at his discretion.
Yeah. One thing I don't know if it's been mentioned here, you probably would be the only second Native American in the history of the country to be a cabinet member, which I appreciate. And you know that I also do a lot of work with our Native American communities, the 22 federally recognized tribes in Arizona. And the one concern I also have is that when it comes to building some of these installations on the border, there has been very, very little to no tribal consultation, especially with some of our border tribes, the Totowa O'odham Nation, where we are building walls in areas that doesn't have much like ESL. So I have problems with the English once in a while too. There's a border wall that is going through tribal land that is in very sacred land that is not crossed and used significantly by human smugglers. It's important that DHS actually speak to these communities. They actually have programs that they do where they actually are working with DHS and local law enforcement to stop illegal smuggling, called Shadow Wolf program that DHS supports. But this last administration in DHS did not talk to them whatsoever. Did not talk about, did not even give the vague idea of tribal consultation, and now they're just building into some areas that has, unfortunately, some burials of some of their the people from their tribe. And so I think it's important that we reestablish tribal sovereignty, and I hope because of your background you'll understand and appreciate that.
I respect tribal sovereignty, and there's a lot of technology. Now, we do have a job to secure the border, but we will work with tribal nations because there's other ways to have a physical barrier where you can have technology there too. And I don't think anybody would complain about that. But yes, my background. We have worked on tribal issues a lot, and I appreciate your passion. And I have a lot of good friends in Arizona with tribes that that we've been on have good relationships with.
And these tribal nations would absolutely work with you as long as they felt that there was the respect and also respect for the land, because we have a history of that. And Mr. Chairman, I'm up. I can.
We're going to come back around if you have a question.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Mullin, welcome to the committee. I see you have some supporters with you today. Chairman Smith, good to see you. My friend Sean O'Brien is here. I want the record to reflect that my money was always on O'Brien. I just want that noted. I want it noted for the record. Senator Mullin, let me ask you this. In your own words, could you tell us just in capsule form, what is it that DHS, what's the mission of DHS as you understand it, as you would put it, as you would explain it?
Quite simply, it's simple: to protect the homeland.
Very good. To protect the homeland. Okay, let me ask you this. 10 days ago, there was a shooting at Old Dominion University that left one person dead, 2 people critically injured. The gunman had potential terrorist ties. Is this a good time for the Department of Homeland Security to be shut down and unfunded?
It's the worst time, and keep in mind, we just came up a 43-day shutdown, as this is the 3rd time in a year, and it's devastating to the morale of the men and women we have tasked to take care of all of us, all the homeland, regardless if it's a blue state or it's a red state. we have to look at it all the same, and they have that mission mindset, but they don't have the pay to follow it up.
A few days before that, 2 individuals attempted to detonate bombs in New York City in a way that would cause mass civilian casualties. Both of those individuals have potential terrorist connections. In light of that, is it a good time for DHS to be shut down?
Sir, I think with the current conditions, this is the worst time we could possibly do it.
A few days before that, in Austin, Texas, 3 people were fatally shot outside of a bar there when a gunman opened fire in the early hours of a Sunday morning. That gunman also had potential terrorist ties, and yet DHS is shut down. Just a week ago, a gunman loaded his truck with incendiary devices and rammed it into the Temple Israel Synagogue outside Detroit, Michigan. As I'm sure you know, 40 law enforcement officers, 40, had to get emergency medical attention. It's a miracle. By the grace of God, nobody was killed except for the gunman. But 40 individuals had to get medical attention, and yet DHS is still shut down. Let me just ask you this. Law enforcement dangers. I think I've got a poster that'll go up behind me here. In the last year alone, we have seen an 8,000% increase in death threats to law enforcement, a 1,300% increase in assaults, a 124% increase in vehicular attacks using a vehicle, against a CBP law enforcement. Now, in light of this, is it a good time for DHS to be shut down?
Sir, it's a horrible time.
Let's talk about children. Let's talk about the dangers to children. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimates that there are 20.5 million reports of suspected online and child exploitation. That includes almost 20 million reports of child pornography, 546,300 reports of online enticement of children for sexual acts, and 27,000 reports of child sex trafficking. Is it a good time for DHS to be shut down?
No, sir.
Let me ask you if you've seen this poster that I'm about to put behind me. Have you ever seen this before, Senator?
I don't believe so.
There's no reason you should have. I was introduced to this material by Tim Tebow, the Heisman Trophy winner, who now spends a lot of his time trying to help work with child victims of sex abuse. This poster reflects every individual IP address in the United States in about a 1-month period that was sharing, distributing, posting, or trading child sex abuse material or child pornography of some form. You want to guess how many points there are on that map?
It makes me sick. I have no idea.
338,000. That's just a 1-month period. Now, can you see any blue dots on that map, Senator Mullin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's very, you got better eyes than I do. I mean, there's like very few of them. I'd be surprised if anybody in the audience could see them. The blue dots are the number of investigations that are open. Look at the red dots, 338,000. Look at the blue dots, you can hardly see them. Why would that be? Because in the best of times, the Department of Homeland Security has only 10 HSI agents who are fully dedicated to doing this. It's all Congress has given you, 10. Right now, none of those are funded. Is this a good time for the Department of Homeland Security to be shut down?
I think any parent can look at that and it makes you sick, especially with teenage daughters like myself. That's scary. We have to focus on this.
It's very scary. That's exactly right. I'm glad to hear you say that. The Biden administration and your predecessor in this role, Alejandro Mayorkas, lost track of 450,000 children who were trafficked across our border over a 4-year period. 450,000 children. It's the biggest child trafficking ring that was set up under the last administration in the history of this country. The president has been doing a tremendous job. They found in the last year over 145,000 of them. That leaves almost 300,000 who are still missing. And yet, the Department of Homeland Security is unfunded and shut down. Let me just ask you again, does it seem like a good time for that?
No, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that are being faced by people across the country who are facing natural disasters, as we have in my home state of Missouri. We had major tornadoes rip through Missouri last spring, all across the state, particularly concentrated in the eastern part of the state, the St. Louis area, southeast Missouri. We have thousands of people who are without power, who lost their homes, many who were injured. We have had much disaster aid approved by FEMA, but we're still waiting for some of that aid to get to us. And now FEMA is shut down. So I've got thousands of people in Missouri who are awaiting the aid that the president has approved, by the way, and that FEMA has approved, but that's in the process of coming to the state. I've got probably hundreds of people who are not able to go back to their homes and who are applying for individual assistance that hasn't yet been processed by FEMA. And now they're being told, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do because FEMA shut down. Does this seem like a good time for DHS and FEMA to be shut down?
No, sir.
In any airport in the country right now, if you go and look, you will find hours, backups of 4 and 5 hours. You'll find TSA agents. You alluded to this earlier, Senator. Over 10% of TSA agents now are not able to come to the job. Why? Because they make on average $45,000 a year. They can't afford their rent. They can't afford to buy groceries for their kids. They've missed now 2 paychecks. This is endangering the security of our flyers. It's endangering the security of our airports. This is a terrible time for DHS to be shut down. Here's my point. Whether we're talking about children who are missing, whether we're talking about the situation against our law enforcement officers, whether we're talking about the dangers to the homeland, we are involved in a major conflict overseas. This nation's homeland needs to be secured, and yet my friends across the aisle have shut down the Department of Homeland Security. They have defunded every agency we just talked about, and I just want to ask them, how long is it going to take? How long are these children going to have to wait in exploitation? How many more are going to have to go missing? How many TSA agents are going to be able to afford to put food on the table for their children? How long are the people of St. Louis and Southeast Missouri going to have to wait to get back into their homes before we can finally have a vote to reopen the Department of Homeland Security? It is long past time. I welcome your nomination. You're going to be a terrific leader of Homeland Security. I can't wait to see you there. But it's time for this Congress to do its job and fund DHS and protect the homeland of the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, everybody. We are going to do another round of questions. I want to let anybody ask a question that wants to ask a question, but I really don't want to give everybody 7 more minutes. I want to kind of keep it to pressing questions. We'll start on the Republican side. Does somebody have a pressing question they didn't get to ask or would like to ask?
I'll use back.
Anybody else? Senator Ernst.
Yes, thank you. Again, Senator Mullin, I truly appreciate you being here. And I do want to ask some questions. I do want to follow up. So many people have pointed out the various departments that exist and are not being funded under DHS. So we have a really, really significant anniversary coming up this year. So most people will think it's our nation's 250th, which is extraordinary. But the other significant anniversary that has impacted so many of us, especially those of us that have served in uniform, significant anniversary, the 25th year of September 11th, 2001. So right now, we are currently in our 32nd day of the Department of Homeland Security being shut down. We have men and women serving in TSA, in FEMA, in the Coast Guard, Secret Service, in the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, all of them under DHS, not being funded. Now, I just heard in the first round of questions, one of my colleagues on the left say, this has nothing to do with ICE. They are funded. If it has nothing to do with ICE, why are we not funding these agencies that protect Americans? Especially as we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of September 11th this fall. It's a significant anniversary. I hope never to repeat it. But the fact of the matter is that there is a greater possibility of September 11th happening all over again because we are not properly funding the men and women that protect our homeland. So I don't want to hear folks say it has nothing to do with ICE, because I do believe when we get into the politics of this, it is about ICE. It is about ICE. So I would love for my friends on the left to acknowledge it's about ICE, but acknowledge that protecting our homeland is much more important than the politics of this. So, yes, question. Senator Mullin, do you think it's time to set aside the partisan politics and partisan games and fund DHS as a whole so that the department can be fully functioning to protect Americans, especially as we are approaching this fall, the 25th anniversary on one of the greatest attacks that we have ever seen on our homeland?
Yes, Senator. I look at this as a political theater that we're playing games with, and we're risking people's lives, and we're disturbing people's lives. As I stated earlier, we have 260, 280,000 employees in DHS that's still on the job, still working, still keeping us safe without pay. I don't know how in good conscience you could sit there and think that's okay.
It is not okay, and I look forward to your leadership at Department of Homeland Security. Thank you, Senator Mullin. I yield back.
Senator Peters.
Yeah, I have a couple questions for
Yes,
you, Senator Mullin. But before that, I just want to clarify what we're hearing about funding for Homeland Security. I think the political theater has been on the Republican side, because there is really no debate with any of my Democratic colleagues that we need to fully fund FEMA, that we need to fully fund the Coast Guard. We need to fully fund CISA, to fund all of those other areas. The TSA folks all should be fully funded. But unfortunately, my Republican colleagues who control the floor, you are in the majority, you determine which bills go on the floor and which ones are up for a vote. The way we can do that so we don't have a floor vote is we can go and move by unanimous consent and move a bill and say, is there anybody that objects to this bill? And if they don't object, it immediately is passed. That's the procedure. So folks at home watching this, we have bills that will immediately pass and could pass today. We have put on the floor bills to fully fund TSA, and my Republican colleagues have objected. I heard all this support for TSA today, so I hope you tell your colleagues don't object to the TSA funding bill. Please don't do that. We could pass it today. God, that would be great. But we heard a lot of theater, all this stuff. FEMA, pass it today. Coast Guard, pass it today. CISA, cybersecurity, pass it today. So as the nominee for Homeland Security, I would hope you would tell your colleagues, boy, this is really important. Don't object to the bill that allows us to pay for this. Now, granted, the CBP and ICE are not in there because we are around negotiating about making sure that there are guardrails in place so that local or that federal agents have to abide by the same rules as local police. You know, when I go home and I say that, everybody says, really? They don't have to do that now? I'm like, no. But Republicans are going to hold TSA hostage. They're going to hold Coast Guard hostage. They're going to hold FEMA, CISA. They're going to hold it all hostage because they don't want to give any ground on making sure we just have common sense guidelines. We have a solution for that. Pass the bills for all of these other agencies. Pass them. They can happen today. We've tried for the last 2 weeks, and my Republican colleagues object. Don't object anymore. And then let's focus on trying to come together. And I appreciate your comments about how we come together. Let's come together and figure out how we put common sense guidelines in place for federal agents that are operating in our communities. You've expressed an interest in doing that today, and I take you at your word for that. So let's do that. But let's not make TSA a hostage in this whole thing. Let's pass the bills. We can do it. So I heard it. I heard HSI funding from one of my colleagues here. I want to be clear, HSI is funded because both CBP and ICE are fully funded because of the big bill that passed last year. So that funding isn't even in jeopardy. What's in jeopardy, we can fix today. All the things that are not being funded, we can fund today. And every single Democrat is for it. There's only one Republican, it only takes one Republican to object, and apparently that keeps happening. I'd talk to that one Republican and say, stop objecting to this. If you truly all believe in that, stop objecting to it. HSI is getting money now because of the big bill, But what's the problem with HSI? And I agree with my colleague with child exploitation. I'm going to be at the top of the list when it comes to making sure we're doing as much as we can to stop that. But unfortunately, this administration has actually transferred all those HSI people to immigration enforcement. They're not even doing what they were supposed to be doing. So I would hope if you are confirmed, you will bring those folks back to their role that my colleague says is so important, which I agree with. But why did the administration send them off to immigration work then? Apparently, the administration doesn't think it's as important as my colleague. And I just want to wrap up here. Questions that we had related to your bio. And the biography is important. And it's important that we fully understand how you're presenting yourself. And if there are any ambiguities, we want to work that out. On March 11th, I sent you a letter asking for information about any activity related to any special assignment, which you talked about here today, that you have been involved in. There was no exception for official travel or any of that. We just asked any of these special assignments that you have talked about. You responded to the committee in that letter by saying my voluntary work included special assignments outside of DOD, was that I offered support and mentorship from a Christian perspective to both Afghans that supported our efforts and other personnel that served in war zones. You stated your special assignments occurred intermittently between 2006 and 11. My letter did not exclude official travel, and it also gave you explicit instructions in that letter for providing classified information, how we could do that, and do it in a way that protects that classified information. You didn't provide any of that. And today is the first time that I'm hearing about your classified activities from 2015 to 16. Quite frankly, as we've had these conversations, you have not been forthcoming with me or this committee. The story always seems to evolve, to kind of change. And as you know, candor, honesty, transparency are absolutely critical, particularly at this time to try to build trust as the Secretary of Homeland Security. So we have to clear this up. We feel pretty strongly we have to understand exactly what this is, especially with all your public comments that have raised a lot of questions. We've checked. The SCIF is available. We're going to go in the, we would love to have you come to the SCIF and tell us exactly what you're talking about. I think that'll put my colleagues' mind at peace. Would you be willing to go to the SCIF this afternoon and tell us the classified activities you're talking about?
Sir, I think this committee made it very clear with the paperwork they gave me that I do not have to disclose my my official travel. That was part of the documents. And it went over 2 or 3 times. I complied with exactly what the committee said. And there is no statement for, or no area for mission work and mentorship that was a volunteer basis that I did on my own time. And it was very specific over and over again that you don't have to claim official travel.
We want to know what this supposed classified work was. We have real questions about it. I asked the FBI yesterday, I said, and if someone had appeared in any classified document, any document, would that be in this report? And they said yes. I said, well, I don't see anything for Senator Mullin. Why is that? They said nothing showed up. We queried the Department of State, the Department of Defense, other intel folks. So you're in no classified document that the federal government has according to the FBI, and yet you're telling me you did all this classified work. I don't understand how that recognizes.
Sir, I didn't say all. I was very clear with what I said. I get what you're trying to get to here, and that's fine, but I complied with everything the document said, and it was official travel, and it was a classified trip.
Well, let me just chime in on this. I've agreed this is the fastest hearing anyone's ever had. This will be the fastest vote anyone's ever had, and that's despite my qualms and problems with your nomination. And I'm willing to do that, but when the FBI came to my office, I asked them if you had done any kind of work for the CIA, the DOD, or any other.
I haven't.
Let me finish. Any of these kind of agencies or any kind of classified work, and they said the way it works is you would have a separate folder if you'd been involved in classified missions somewhere, and we would get to see the folder, and then we wouldn't talk about it. We would look at it privately, and we would know what you're referring to. So it's confusing to us because there may have been some papers that said your official trips were excluded. I don't know which ones were and weren't, but you've now mentioned today that you have activities you've done, And so I think it would be easy, and I'm still willing to have the vote tomorrow, but I can cancel the vote tomorrow. I'm still willing to have the vote, get this done, and get it over with. But I think that just to make clear, and it doesn't sound like it's a secret you're too concerned about divulging, if you would to spend an hour and go to the SCIF or 30 minutes and just tell both the ranking member and the other, and it would be private and it won't be revealed, I think it would get this over with and we wouldn't have a complaint about going ahead with the vote tomorrow.
I have no issue with that if you guys get cleared on it, because way my understanding was there was only 4 people read in it, and it was a special program inside the House. Just like I wasn't on Intel at the time, I'm not saying I was, but I have no issue with that at all. I would welcome being brought up. It's very unique, and it was
That
fun.
would be on you. We're not going to try to figure out who the 4 people are and whether we can have approval to it. And
I don't
but if you're doing something
choose-
that important,
Yes.
Really it probably ought to be revealed and discussed in a
Sir,
classified manner.
Senator, or Chairman, it's not on me to. I don't have the authority to do that. This is why I said I was very clear. Sorry that I never talked specific dates or locations on this, and so I have zero issue with talking about it. But
Do it this afternoon?
I don't have clearance to talk about this afternoon. I don't. It's
So
not
this
me
is
to
a-
release.
This is a
to release it.
legislative program. This is a program that Congress assigned you to?
Yes, this was within my official duties.
Who assigned it to you?
Sir, that's not for me to talk to you about on this. I'm sorry. This isn't a classified setting. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be ugly. You know how classified situations work in classified information.
Which agency classified it?
It wasn't an agency. It was done here, well, in the House on the time.
The House classified it.
I'm assuming. I wasn't on Intel.
We're just not really aware of how the House classifies things.
I have no idea. I know every time we spoke about this, we had to go to the SCIF and visit about it.
But I mean,
I know there was a paper that I had to sign before it even started, and I may be wrong. There may be more than 4, but I know it was only me and 3 other people that ever discussed
so
it.
secret that we can't know about it. I would think that there'd be some paperwork in the SCIF that they should show us saying, this is so top secret and this was made classified.
I have no problem. You're welcome to go to the House. This started in 2015. It ended in little late in 2016. I have nothing to hide on this. This is too easy. I would really enjoy sitting there and having a conversation with you because I don't want you to have question my character on this. So that's very simple for me, but I can't make that authorization. You guys know that.
Well, it's a little difficult for us to go ask about a program that has no name and we have nobody that we know to talk to about it. So I don't know how we would begin doing this without your cooperation. But
I'm
if you
willing
do
to
it, I'm
cooperate.
willing to hold the vote tomorrow, but you brought this up, that you were on a super secret mission that you can't tell
No,
us
I did
about.
not say super secret, sir. I said it was classified.
That only 4
Only
people
4 people
about it.
know?
Well,
That's pretty secret.
I only know if there was 4 people. There was maybe more people that understood it, but I know there was only 3 people plus me that was ever in the meeting. And so as far as I'm concerned, only 4 people was read in on this.
So did this you were on the Intel committee?
No, not at the time. No, sir. I was on the Intel committee after that.
What committee were you on at the time?
You got to think about 10 years ago. Energy and Commerce.
So it was an energy and commerce top secret effort.
Senator,
I'm just
I
asking.
know what I'm getting upset about a little bit here is that your tone that you're saying that in a condescending way. I did what I was asked
I'm
to
trying
do.
to find out who we would talk to.
Sir, I've told you exactly what happened here. I was not required to disclose this on any official travel. Your documents are very, very clear on that. So I don't know what else you want me to say. You said you can go find out. Go find out. And then when you guys say it's good for me to talk to you, I'll be happy to talk to you about it. I can't talk specifics. If you want to talk about in general ideas, let's go down and talk in the SCIF. I'm okay with that. But I can't get into the necessary specifics or who made the decision to do it. But I can talk in general, and I'll be very, very glad to do that with you. And even Senator Langford, I know, is on Intel. He can come down with us and visit with us about it. No issues with that at all. Perfectly clear and okay with it. But it's not for me to release this. So if you guys want to do that, we can leave here, go down there and talk about it.
Did this mission involve exchange of fire?
It wasn't a mission. It was an official travel with specific deals or for specific fact-finding, just like any official travel is, that they wanted clarification on. And so, like I said, be happy to talk to you about it if you guys want to.
And it was in a conflict zone?
Sir, once again, I'm not talking about specific details or dates because we've revealed that this was a classified situation. Now I'm not going to talk about because anything I've talked about in the past wasn't referencing any of this, but I'm definitely not going to get into it now. It's talking about specific dates or details.
We would have no way of exploring this unless you were willing to cooperate on.
I don't know, Chairman, I don't know what else you said, what else you want me to do. I said I will go down there and talk about this with you in a skip, but I can't give the specific, all the specific
details. There's no reason to think that somehow we're not qualified to look at classified information. Yeah. And so the thing is we would have to know.
There is a lot of programs out there, Chairman, that you know is based on a need to know.
Right.
And maybe you can talk to Senator Lankford about this too. Senator Lankford, would you like to talk about?
I'm glad to jump in. This feels, as my mom used to say, a mountain out of a molehill, where he is offered over and over and over again to say, let's get into a classified setting. I just left the worldwide threats hearing where I had to run over to be able to run back there. And meeting with all the folks there were several questions that I asked there that they gave me a partial answer and said, I'll give you the rest of this answer in a skiff. And everybody goes, oh, okay, I get that. Because there are some things that are sources, methods, or actions that we're all keenly aware of on this. And I don't know what else he could say at this point other than let's get in the skiff and let's actually talk about this.
Why don't we start with that initial meeting and see how that goes?
Yeah, we'll have an initial meeting. Yeah. That's what we asked for, Senator.
Yeah.
He said he couldn't do that because he wasn't authorized to.
No, I did say that. I said I can't give you all the details to it because it's not for me to release it, but I can talk to you in general about it, but not in this setting.
Yeah, and let's get the information out and be able to talk it through and be able to find out what this is. All of us have been in classified settings before.
Let's try to get it done this afternoon so we can.
I'm available right after this. So if we're, Senator or Chairman, if you want to, we can go leave from here and go straight there.
Yeah, and let's try to get the hearing finished. So I really want to, let's try no more speeches back and forth on all the ICE stuff if we can. If you kind of just conclude that one, can I come back to you in a minute?
Sure.
All right. Senator Hassam, let's try to get off of funding ICE and stuff. Let's just try to stick to the nomination for now.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I do have to take a moment because during my first round of questions, I discussed the current impasse we find ourselves in over ICE reforms and DHS funding, and I didn't speak clearly, so I just do need to clarify my comments now. ICE already has significant funding right now for the President's budget bill, from the President's budget bill last summer, which provided the agency with several times more money than its annual budget and gave ICE broad discretion about how to use that money. That means that the partial shutdown that we have right now has nothing to do with whether ICE has the usual levels of funding it needs to operate, since the agency already has many times its annual budget. It's about, instead, the need for policy reforms to help ensure that ICE operates using the same kind of standards that state and local law enforcement in New Hampshire and around the country uphold every single day. Now, Senator Fetterman was right earlier when he pointed out that this shutdown is impacting other parts of DHS that handle cybersecurity and transportation security and other critical functions. We need to resolve it right now, and as Senator Peters just described, we have been pushing to do that in the ways that the minority can. We need to reach agreement on ICE policy reforms or by funding the rest of the department while we continue to negotiate on those reforms, something I strongly support, but unfortunately Republicans have blocked. The reforms to ICE are critical. DHS is supposed to be prioritizing the removal of dangerous and violent criminals. Instead, we've seen DHS agents assault and even kill American citizens while wearing masks, seeming without accountability. So now this is the question. Senator, if a masked ICE or other DHS agent kills an American citizen, should local law enforcement be allowed to investigate and hold that agent accountable?
Unfortunately, local law enforcement isn't supposed to be investigating federal. That's what DOJ and FBI is for. Now, we will communicate with local law enforcement, but that's not their job. FBI, it's just the same thing if in most municipalities, if there's a fatality shooting, there's another agency that oversees them. And in this case, it'd be the FBI who is set up inside the DOJ to investigate those.
So you've answered no, and your answer would make ICE unaccountable, and that endangers not just the rule of law, but also the security of all Americans. I wanted to get to one other question. During the past year, DHS leadership cut CISA's expert workforce by nearly a third. Meanwhile, adversaries and criminal syndicates are accelerating their cyber attacks against the United States. How do you plan to restore DHS's cybersecurity force and better secure our critical infrastructure from cyber attacks?
Man, we've got to recruit the right people, but the best and brightest individuals in those areas. I know the University of Tulsa has a great program, but recruiting individuals that want to be there, that want to deliver the mission is vitally important, and so we will work to make sure that happens.
So you agree we need to add people back into CISA and pursue this critical function, and they need to be nonpartisan experts with experience and commitment to the safety and security of our country, wherever that leads them.
No one in the Homeland should be looking at this from a bipartisan perspective. Now, if you want me to talk about staffing numbers, I don't know what the mission requires, but we'll be staffed adequately if we can find the right people to staff and to make sure that we're mission capable.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, out of respect for your desire to move things along, I will submit for the record a question on non-intrusive imaging at the border. It's supposed to be ready to do for every vehicle entering the United States, especially to detect fentanyl. And I'd like your answer on that and a couple of other questions as well, but I'll submit those for the record. Thank you.
Without objection. Senator Langford.
Thank you. We talked before about just trying to get information on time and such. In the transition that happened between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, data fell behind, and it fell really behind. It was one of my complaints that I had with Mayorkas that was sometimes 2 or 3 weeks late on releasing normal data information, just how many encounters were happening at the border, how many arrests, some of those things on it. Last year, it wasn't weeks late, it was months and months and months late on getting data out. DHS has a really good story to tell. There's a lot of good things that are happening there, but my concern is that social media and some of the examples are coming out just to tell the story, and DHS is not able to actually tell the story. And quite frankly, we've asked DHS several times, hey, give us more information, more data on this. One of the things I'd love to know is just that you've been one of us for a long time in this. You know the importance of oversight and what that means on this, to be able to get data to members of Congress and to the American people. And so quite frankly, we can see the story as well. So I'm not asking for a pledge because I already know your heart on that, but want to just be able to open that up on how we can actually get more data and information.
Our Ledge Affairs Department, I'm going to stand up and make sure that we're communicating and getting the information you need. It's not going to be fixed overnight, but it does frustrate me as a former member of the House and definitely a current member in the Senate that when we make a request, it's not seen. Now, there is a difference between making actual requests because you're wanting to get to a solution versus harassment.
Badgering people.
Yes, there is a tremendous amount that happens. Both sides play the games, and I'm just not going to play that game. I'll work with any senator, I'll work with any committee to make sure that we are getting the information you need to do your job. But just for harassment purposes, please, I ask you, if you want me to do my job and do it right and be transparent with you, don't play games with me either, because, and if you have real concerns, like I said, everybody on this committee, and really for our colleagues for that matter, have my personal cell phone. That number, I have no intentions of changing it unless somebody leaks it.
Yeah, hopefully that wouldn't occur on it. One other quick question on this. Ali Mayorkas, when he sat at that desk before, he and I had a lot of conversations about what they called, was labeled the special interest aliens. These are folks that come from known areas of terrorism, but we didn't have any information on them specifically, and so the Biden administration just let them in. They may say, well, we know somebody in your family as acts of terrorism, but it's not you, so they just labeled them special interest aliens and released them into the country. That we know of about 70,000 of those individuals. The Trump administration in the last year and a couple of months has picked up 50,000 of those. That's part of this enforcement that's out there to be able to identify folks that I've been ringing the bell on over and over and over again saying, why are we letting people in that We literally say, yeah, they could be a terrorist, they could not be a terrorist, we don't know. Somebody in their family is, but we don't know them if they are on it. So they were just released into the country on that and given that label. In fact, I was told, we'll keep watching them, but when I went to the FBI and asked them directly, they were like, there's no way we can track 70,000 people. So there's been a lot of good work to be able to try to identify where those people went, who they're associating with here in the United States on it, and then removing them from the United States. There's still about 20,000 left. Love to be able to get your promise to say, we're not going to quit. We're going to continue to be able to find folks that were just allowed to come in the country that may be a terrorist and may not be a terrorist, we don't know, but to be able to go identify those folks and make sure that American people are protected.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
We're almost done. We have 2 people left who haven't responded this round. We've had a lot of debate over ICE funding. I hope we can ask just some specific questions to the nominee. I can't control what you ask, but that's my hope. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Senator Mullin, just months before the war with Iran began, the Trump administration negotiated a back-channel agreement, a deal with the Islamic Republic to deport Iranian nationals, including asylum seekers, dissidents. There have been public reports about it. CNN on January 26, 2026. New York Times reported it in a couple of articles in September and December, that flights in around that time deported tens of those kinds of Iranian nationals back to Iran as part of this secret agreement. I want to tell you about one husband and wife, Christian converts from Islam, who were sentenced in absentia to 9 and 11-year sentences by the Islamic Republic. They fled to the United States seeking asylum, but they were detained by ICE on arrival. The wife was deported. She managed to take refuge in Turkey. The husband, I'll call him Mr. H, is still here, but he's facing deportation despite showing scars from the beating he received by a government gang. I have both of their declarations. I'd like them to be entered in the record. There are Iranian-American organizations like the Iranian-American Legal Defense Fund that have further information. I have no doubt that you share my outrage about the treatment of this couple and other Iranian nationals who were deported possibly to torture and death in Iran. Will you agree with me and commit that we should stop deporting such people?
Ma'am, sir, I don't know the specifics behind this. I think before I can talk about in hypotheticals, I would need to know what the reasons behind it, but I don't want to deport anybody that's here illegally, or here legally, I mean. And most definitely not individuals that have done everything possible to be a contributor to society. But in these specific cases, I don't know. I'm not familiar with them. I don't know if there's something else in the background that would cause the administration
I'm
to do
talking
it.
in general about tens of people, as many as 55 on one flight, 15 or so on another, not just this couple. But in principle, we should not be sending Iranian dissidents and asylum seekers back to Iran. Wouldn't you agree?
Sir, we do know that our enemies want to infiltrate us and use our rules and our generosity against us. And so I don't know the specifics of these. I don't know their background. I don't know what the reasons was, but I will be happy to look into it.
Let me ask you about another topic. I'm glad that you've committed that there will not be the kind of review that Secretary Noem imposed on contracts above a certain amount uniformly by your office. But I'd like your commitment that you will help us investigate another abuse of authority. Corey Lewandowski apparently was in charge of approving all contracts. One of them was a $220 million contract that was related directly to Kristi Noem's being fired. They bypassed procurement rules to award that contract to a shell company that was created days before to benefit a Republican consulting firm with close ties to Secretary Noem and Mr. Lewandowski. will you commit to cooperating with our investigation, the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, making documents and personnel available to congressional and other investigations into those contracts awarded by Secretary Noem and Mr. Lewandowski?
Senator, I've heard these same reports. I know the IG, Joseph, I don't know him personally. That's why I say Joseph. Some people call him Joe. Is open investigations. We will cooperate with him.
And provide all the documents and records that are necessary for this committee to do its work. That's what I'm asking.
I'll do everything that's required of me by law, but the IG will be doing the investigation, and we'll let the IG, decide what documents he's going to share, and maybe you can bring that up with him.
Well, in fact, Secretary Noem obstructed the investigations underway by the IG. In fact, in at least 10 investigations, they were the subject of a letter from the IG. Are you committing to immediately begin restoring the department's working relationship with the IG?
If confirmed, absolutely. I will do everything required of me by law and the policies that you guys give me. There won't be any gray area with me. We want to have a good relationship with the IG. He's got a job to do, and every other agency that's underneath DHS.
And you'll cooperate with the committee in providing those.
Sir, I've everything that is required of me to report, and anything that you want the IG to do, that's between you and the IG.
Senator Mullins, I don't think I need to tell you that the American people have been appalled and angered by what they've seen in the excessive use of force. We've had hearings before the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation that have shown Aliyah Rahman, a woman suffering from traumatic brain injury, yanked from her car in Minneapolis, dragged by her arms, leading both of her shoulders to be torn. Javier Ramirez, a father of 4 from California, detained for 4 days and refused medical treatment for his diabetes. We documented these abuses in a report that we issued and in hearings that we conducted. One of them was Marimar Martinez, who was on her way to donate clothing at a local church when she came across agents in an unmarked car. Agents sideswiped her car. 3 masked agents in camouflage stormed out, and one of them pulled out his gun and fired at her moving vehicle, hitting her 5 times. And the agent then bragged about it. He bragged about it in a text. He said, I have an MOF, I won't detail it. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Shouldn't we be disgusted by an agent that fires at a U.S. citizen, no criminal record? She was charged.
Senator Blumenthal.
The charges were dismissed. Wouldn't you agree with me that that agent should not be carrying a firearm?
I'm not familiar with the investigation, sir, and I don't know if the investigation is completed. As Secretary, I'm sure I'll be briefed on this.
All right, time's expired. I know these are important issues, but we just have to move on. We're going to finish up with Senator Kim, then we're going to make a statement that hopefully can be agreeable for a meeting later. Senator Kim.
I'll be concise here, Chairman. Senator, there's just a couple last things here. A couple weeks ago, we had a hearing here, and I was engaged with the head of USCIS, and I raised an issue that happened in San Diego of spouses of military members and veterans. They were going in to get interviewed for a green card and were arrested upon their arrival. I just wanted to get your reaction to that. Is that the kind of behavior you think is acceptable?
Excuse me, repeat that again.
It was spouses of military service members as well as veterans. Their spouses were going and for the purposes of a green card interview, but were at that point detained and arrested on arrival.
I haven't heard about this. I've heard of different reports, Senator, and if people are going through the process and trying to obtain it legally, because we do have naturalization ceremonies Monday through Friday in this country, everywhere. We're going to continue working with those individuals. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know.
I'll pass you the details, but it's something that we can talk through. But just in general here, I guess what I'm just trying to get a sense from you is, what do you think is appropriate in terms of ICE agents being able to operate? You know, for instance, do you think it is okay for them to operate and arrest people at hospitals?
Sir, I will always support my law enforcement doing their job. I don't know the circumstances. If it's a felony warrant that that the person's at a hospital, then they'll go pick up the felony warranty, just like local law enforcement does the same thing. And so in general, I think you need to be more specific on what you're talking about. But if you're talking about just doing everyday law enforcement, I think there's a better approach.
Senator, I just want to raise, you know, I just hear a lot of this from my own community about concerns of these types of efforts out, you know, in and around hospitals, schools, churches. These are things that I hope we can engage on. I know you talked about it with one of my colleagues about polling sites, but these are important discussions, and we don't have clarity on what we are expected to see, and it's causing just an enormous amount of concern and challenge within our communities.
Well, Senator, I don't understand what the concern about enforcing immigration at polling places is anyways, because honestly, if you're not a citizen, you shouldn't be voting anyway. So technically, there shouldn't be any illegals at the polling spot. And so, as I've said before, if we're at a polling area, it's because of a specific threat, not for immigration.
Yeah, look, what I will just convey here is it's not just about people who are undocumented. I'm hearing from American citizens that are now feeling like they need to carry their passports around for fear of being stopped on the street. You know, there is a chilling effect that is happening that is wider. You know, I had to give my father-in-law specific instructions in case he was stopped upon re-entry back into the United States. You know, there is real concern out there, and I just wanted to express that to you. Just a couple last quick things here. At the detention facility in New Jersey, a different one called Delaney Hall, I was there right after a gentleman was died there. And there was really no documentation, really minimal explanation of his cause of death. You know, there was 32 deaths at detention facilities under ICE control last year. Yet the oversight offices at DHS to do this, offices like the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Office of Immigration Detention Oversights, they've been gutted. And I just wanted to ask, do you commit to being able to ensure that there is the proper oversight there internally within DHS, working alongside us in Congress to ensure that people are being kept at the dignified levels that they should according to a law?
Each facility falls underneath different standards of operation that are in statutes. We will operate within those statutes. Everybody deserves to be treated with a dignified hand, and we will follow those procedures that are set for those facilities particularly.
Well, I hope to work with you on that if you're confirmed, because we need to make sure we have that oversight, as we have not been able to see it. And in fact, you know, some of our efforts have been impeded because we have not been able to have visitation at some of these sites, and I hope that that's something you will support us to be able to have. One last thing I just wanted to raise. With FEMA, there was a number of employees that sent an open letter titled the Katrina Declaration. This is something that warned about some of the reversals that are being made when it comes to disaster response and recovery. Your predecessor, Secretary Noem, she suspended a number of these FEMA employees. I just wanted to ask, can you commit that if confirmed, you will adhere to whistleblower laws and ensure that these whistleblowers do not face retaliation for their protected disclosure?
So there's already laws in place to protect whistleblowers, and I've said multiple times, I'll work within the law and the requirements of me as secretary.
And I hope that means that you will ensure that these whistleblowers do not face unlawful retaliation for what they have done.
It's against the law, as you said, unlawful, sir. I said I'm going to work within the law, and that's unlawful.
Okay. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. As I said previously, we've scheduled a vote for tomorrow. I'm committed to that. There are several members on both sides of the aisle that would like a briefing in the SCIF. They have it from 1 to 2. If you're willing to do that, several members would like just to walk over and do it. And I think that makes it much more likely that we have the vote tomorrow.
Sir, I would prefer to have the ranking member, yourself, James, and if you want to bring another Democrat member that's on.
It's all or none. All the members need to be able to hear it directly. The problem up here is too many things are siloed, and it just looks like resistance that you don't want everything to come out. It'd be much more forthcoming if you let any member of the committee and classified staff into it. I think we can get this done this afternoon.
That's fine, as long as it's in a classified setting.
As long as what? Yeah, that's fine. The people
fine.
classified security on our staff and staff. TSCI.
TSSCI, yes.
All right. All right, thanks everybody for coming today. The nominee has filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires, answered pre-hearing questions submitted by the committee, and had their financial statements reviewed by the Office of Government Ethics. Without objection, this information will be made part of the hearing record with the exception of the nominee's financial data, which are on file with the committee. Due to the quick turnaround between this hearing and the markup tomorrow, the hearing will remain open until 4 p.m. today, March 18th. This hearing is adjourned.
James?